Hello, this is Rebecca again, and today we're going to look at writing the thesis statements for contrast essays. You already know how to write thesis statements for cause essays, effect essays, and comparison essays. So as you can guess, a contrast essay thesis statement is very similar to these. What three things does it need? I'm sure you know the answer to this, but let's go over it together. It needs to tell us the main topic. In this case, it's the two things that will be contrasted in the essay. And it needs to tell us the essay type. In this case, it's differences. And it needs to tell us the two subtopics, the two different ways that these things will be contrasted. What else do you already know about writing thesis statements? You've had a lot of practice up until now, and I'm sure you're getting more familiar with writing these, so you probably have some other ideas in your head about what a thesis statement needs. Here's some ideas. First of all, we know that our two things to be contrasted and our two subtopics, all of these can be written as noun phrases or gerund phrases or as noun clauses. And you should be familiar with all of these different ways to give yourself some flexibility. Also, we know that when we make lists, we must use parallel structure. So when we have a list of our things to be contrasted, and when we have our list of subtopics, we want to use parallel structure. And generally, you are familiar with the style of thesis statements. You know how they should sound. So let's try writing a few. I have 3 different styles to show you, and these are all also in your book. The first one, we start with the topics, and we write them out as a subject, verb, object. So let's do it step by step. The Holy Roman Empire, there's our subject, thing 1, the first thing to be contrasted. Differs from, varies from, is different from. This is all, we have a verb, phrasal verbs here. This one is a little bit different. We have a verb and an adjective, but they all mean the same thing. So this is our contrast verb to connect our thing 1 with our thing 2. So the Holy Roman Empire differs from the Ottoman Empire. Here's our thing 2, and now this is our object. And then we have a phrase to link the topics to our subtopics. So in 2 aspects with a colon, in or in terms of, and then we have our 2 subtopics. They're administration and succession. If this topic is unfamiliar to you, you should go back and look at the video about writing a contrast essay. So, very simple. The Holy Roman Empire is different from the Ottoman Empire in their administration and succession in terms of in 2 aspects. All of these are fine. So what do you think is missing here? What could go here? This here is an optional adverb that you could add to describe the contrast if you want. And that's why I have these stars here, because it shows you where the adverb should go. These are ones we could use. Differs greatly from, varies remarkably from, is considerably different from. So these are optional, but you can add them in if they will give extra meaning to your thesis statement. A small bit of practice here. So I have a new T1 and T2 playing in a sports event, contrasted with watching a sports event. These are two gerund phrases. And my subtopics are how active it is and how stressful it can be. So I've written these as noun clauses. So if you'd like a little practice, pause the video and try to write a thesis statement for this topic and subtopics in this style. And now I'm going to go on to the next screen, which will show the answer. So pause if you're not ready to see it. Playing in a sports event varies greatly from watching a sports event in two aspects. Colon starts our list, how active it is, and how stressful it can be. Notice that I didn't have to change any of the wording here. I could use them exactly as they are. The gerund phrase and the noun clauses. So let's look at the second way. This time we'll start with the subtopics, and they are together as the subject. So here's our subtopics. Their administration and succession as our subject. Are to, our main verb are must be in the plural form because this is two things. Are to differences between. So this phrase tells us our essay type. And then we have the Holy Roman Empire, first thing to be contrasted, and the Ottoman Empire, our second thing to be contrasted. So again, a very simple sentence, but this time starting with the subtopics. What do you think we put in here? Optionally, we can put an adjective to describe the contrast. In this case, it describes the difference because it's going before the noun. So our two striking differences, our two important differences. Their administration and succession are two significant differences between the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. There should be a period at the end of that sentence there. So again, I have the same little practice for you using the same T1 and T2, playing and watching a sports event, and the same noun clauses, how active it is, how stressful it can be. And once again, write your own thesis statement in this style with this information. And pause the video if you need time. I am going on to the next screen now that shows the answer. So if you're not ready, pause the video. Here we are. How active it is and how stressful it can be are two clear differences between playing in a sports event and watching a sports event. Now, if you are unfamiliar with noun clauses, it can look like this sentence is wrong because we have an is and a be and an are right together, but I promise you that this is correct. We always have a question word or a that at the start of the noun clause. And then we have subject-verb order. So now let's look at our third type of thesis statement. And in this case, the subtopics are in a list after a colon. There are two. So in the first one, we started with our topics. In the second one, we started with our subtopics. And in this third one, we're starting with this general phrase, there are. There are two, subject and verb, and the count, differences between, tells us the essay type, the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And here's our colon. We need that colon there. And the next part, oh, sorry. Obviously, this is the two things being contrasted. We can say one is administration, the first subtopic, and the other is succession, our second subtopic. Now you see I put these in parentheses here because those are optional. You could just say S1 and S2 are two subtopics. You don't need to write it in this full sentence form. It's up to you. So what do you think is missing here? Just like before, we have some optional adjectives that we can use to describe our differences. There are two major differences. There are two striking differences. There are two crucial differences between the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. One is administration, and the other is succession. Or we can just say administration and succession. Again, same gerund phrase and noun clause, topics and subtopics. Try to write a thesis statement in this style using these ideas again. Pause the video if you need to. And I'm going to go to the next slide, which has the answer. So if you don't want to see it, pause the video. Here we are. There are two striking differences between playing in a sports event and watching a sports event. How active it is and how stressful it can be. In this part, I have in a sports event or a sports event twice. So I could shorten this. I could say between playing and watching, or between playing in and watching a sports event. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. So we went over three different styles of thesis statements. One that starts with the topics, one that starts with the subtopics, and one that starts with there are. So before we finish, let's look at a few topic sentences for these two essay topics. And you know that the topic sentences include the main topic, the two things to be contrasted, the essay type, which is differences, and just one of the subtopics, right? Because this is just for a body paragraph, so it's only for one subtopic. So let's see what these look like for our two topics that we've used today. For this topic, we could see the Holy Roman Empire differed greatly from the Ottoman Empire in terms of administration. This is almost exactly the same as a thesis statement. We're just missing one of the subtopics. But you can also write these in different ways. They don't have to have the same language as a thesis statement. The Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire also had different succession laws. So there's a little bit more flexibility with writing topic sentences than thesis statements. playing in a sports event and watching a sports event. So body 1 might be, these two ways of having fun are very different in their activity levels. Now, if you think about it, body 1 comes immediately after the thesis statement. So we've just seen these two phrases in the previous sentence. So that's why I've changed this so that I don't repeat that again. I'm saying it in a different way because I've just seen it in my thesis statement. But then by the time we get to body 2, it might need saying again. So I'll say it longer. The level of stress is another contrast between playing and watching a sports event. So that's all. Go ahead and check the follow-up activity for more practice, and I'll see you next time.